Thanksgiving had always been the brightest day of the year for me. It wasn't just about the food, the golden turkey fresh from the oven, the sweet aroma of pumpkin pie, or the creamy mashed potatoes piled high on my plate. It was about togetherness, laughter, and the warmth of family gathered under one roof. Every year, no matter how hard things were, my family always found a way to celebrate. That's why this year, I couldn't stop smiling as the date drew closer. I imagined the table set with candles, my mother's laughter echoing from the kitchen, and the familiar feeling of home filling every corner of the house. I thought nothing could break that tradition. Nothing at all. But then came the words I never expected to hear. "We're not doing Thanksgiving this year." My family said flatly, "It's too tight. We can't afford it. We'll just stay in." At first, I thought it was a joke. A cruel one, maybe, but the silence that followed told me they were serious. My heart sank, the excitement draining from me all at once. Cancel Thanksgiving? How could they? It felt impossible. It felt wrong. I tried to protest, to remind them that Thanksgiving wasn't just about money or feasts. But their expressions were firm, their voices final. The holiday I had been waiting for all year was suddenly gone. Still, I had no idea then that this canceled Thanksgiving would turn into something far more unforgettable. Something that would change the way I saw family, gratitude, and even myself. Because what happened next, nobody could have predicted. The announcement hung in the air like a storm cloud. No Thanksgiving this year. Too tight, too expensive. I stared at my family, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was all a mistake. But no one did. My mother sat with her arms folded, eyes heavy with worry. My father rubbed his forehead, like the weight of the world was pressing on him. My siblings glanced away, avoiding my gaze, as though ashamed of what had just been said. My heart pounded. "What do you mean, no Thanksgiving? We've never missed it. Not once." Dad let out a tired sigh. "Groceries are too high. Bills keep stacking up. We just can't do it this year. It's better to stay in and save what little we have." The word stung like a slap. I wanted to argue, to shout, to tell them we didn't need a grand feast or a fancy table. But the defeated look in their eyes silenced me. This wasn't just about food. It was about pride, about the pain of not being able to give. That night, the house felt colder than ever. Usually by this time of year, the kitchen would be alive with plans, lists of ingredients, talk of recipes, laughter bouncing off the walls. Instead, the silence was deafening. The refrigerator hummed in the background, mocking the emptiness inside it. I sat alone at the dining table, staring at the bare wood. No candles, no tablecloth, no signs of the holiday that had once brought us together. My phone buzzed with pictures from friends, golden brown turkeys, crowded tables, smiling faces. Each photo felt like another knife in my chest. Everyone else seemed to be celebrating while I sat in a house stripped of joy. Anger bubbled up inside me. Why cancel everything? I whispered to myself. Why give up so easily? But deep down, I understood. Money had been tight for months. I had seen the unopened bills, the worried looks exchanged between my parents when they thought no one was watching. They weren't being heartless. They were just tired, worn down by life. Still, I couldn't shake the ache in my chest. Thanksgiving wasn't just about money. Couldn't they see that? Couldn't they remember the way we used to laugh, even when the food was simple and the table was small? As I sat there in the heavy silence, I made a quiet promise to myself. If they couldn't find a reason to celebrate, maybe I would. Somehow, some way, I wasn't going to let Thanksgiving die, not in my heart. But I had no idea how that promise would change everything and lead me to a day I would never forget. As I sat in the silence of our undecorated home, memories began flooding back to me. Memories of Thanksgivings long gone, when things were so different. I could almost smell the buttery rolls baking in the oven, their warmth filling the kitchen as my mother hummed to herself. I remembered waking up to the sound of clattering pots and pans, the air already thick with the scent of cinnamon, roasted vegetables, and turkey slowly cooking. The whole house would feel alive. I used to run into the kitchen, still in my pajamas, eager to sneak a taste. "Not yet," my mother would say with a laugh, swatting my hand away from the pie cooling on the counter. My father would be carving the turkey, his sleeves rolled up, while my siblings set the table with mismatched plates and chipped glasses. But to us it felt like fine china. It never mattered that we didn't have much. Some years the turkey was small, and other years there were more side dishes made from canned goods and fresh ones. But no one cared. The magic wasn't in how much food we had. It was in the way we came together. The sound of laughter echoing through the house, the clinking of forks and knives, the stories shared over steaming plates. That was Thanksgiving to me. I remember my grandmother sitting at the head of the table, her frail voice always reminding us, be grateful for what you have. Even if it's little, gratitude makes a plenty. Those words had stuck with me all these years. And yet, looking around now at the quiet, empty table, it felt like everyone else had forgotten. One Thanksgiving stood out in particular. I must have been 10. We didn't even have a turkey that year. Money had been especially tight, but my mom made a chicken, roasted with herbs she'd grown in the backyard. We laughed about it, calling it the tiniest Thanksgiving turkey in history. But when we sat down, holding hands before the meal, I felt full before I even took a bite. My family was together, and that was enough. Why couldn't it be like that now? The flashbacks burned into my mind, bittersweet and aching. Those days felt so close, yet impossibly far away. I longed to relive even one of them, to feel that warmth again, to prove that Thanksgiving wasn't about money or feasts or picture-perfect tables. It was about gratitude, about love, about holding on to each other when times were hard. As I sat there, staring at the empty table, I realized something. I couldn't just wait for someone else to bring back those memories. If I wanted the spirit of Thanksgiving, I would have to create it myself. But little did I know, the coming hours would bring something even more surprising than any of my memories. Something that would change how I saw Thanksgiving forever. Thanksgiving morning arrived, but it didn't feel like Thanksgiving at all. I woke up to silence. No clattering pots and pans. No smell of food drifting through the halls. No cheerful voices calling me downstairs. For the first time in my life, the day felt like any other Thursday. The emptiness pressed on me like a heavy blanket. I walked into the kitchen, expecting out of habit to see preparations. But the counters were bare. The fridge was full of leftovers from the week, not festive dishes. The dining table sat uncovered, cold and lifeless. I sat down with a sigh, scrolling through my phone. Everywhere I looked, there were photos of friends and family celebrating. Smiling faces around golden turkeys, children holding plates pile high, people clinking glasses with captions like, "So thankful today." Each photo made my chest tighten. Why did everyone else get joy while I sat here with nothing but silence? At first, I tried to ignore it. I turned on the TV, hoping for a distraction, but every channel seemed to have a Thanksgiving special. Cartoons with giant feasts, parades, movies about family coming together. I couldn't escape it. I felt lonelier with every passing minute. The house creaked with a quiet, so loud it almost hurt. My parents had gone to work to pick up extra shifts, and my siblings had disappeared into their rooms. It was as if the day had been erased. Anger began to bubble inside me. How could they just cancel it? How could they forget everything we had always shared? Thanksgiving wasn't supposed to be just another day. It was supposed to mean something. Finally, I pushed myself off the couch and wandered back into the kitchen. My eyes landed on a bag of potatoes, a half carton of eggs, a lonely can of corn. Hardly a feast, but something inside me sparked. Maybe it doesn't have to be nothing. Maybe it doesn't have to be over. I pulled out the ingredients and began to cook. The potatoes became mashed with a little butter. The eggs turned into a makeshift casserole. I even found some bread and toasted it, sprinkling it with garlic. It was small, humble, nothing compared to the feast of the past. But as the smells filled the kitchen, the silence felt a little less sharp. When I finally sat down to eat, I placed my little dishes in the center of the table. I whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "Happy Thanksgiving." I took a bite, and though the food was plain, a warmth spread through me. For a moment, I felt like I was holding on to something real. Like I was proving to myself that the holiday wasn't completely gone. But deep down, I couldn't escape the sadness. This wasn't the Thanksgiving I wanted. This wasn't the laughter, the love, the togetherness I craved. It was a pale shadow of the holiday I remembered. I swallowed my food, blinking back tears, feeling the weight of loneliness settle over me again. And then, just when I thought the day was doomed to end in silence, a knock sounded at the door. I froze, fork halfway in my mouth. Who could it be on Thanksgiving, when we weren't expecting anyone? Slowly, I stood up, my heart thudding in my chest. That knock would change everything. The knock echoed again, louder this time. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it, a trick of my lonely mind. But no, it was real. Someone was at the door. I hesitated, unsure whether to open it. My family hadn't mentioned visitors, and who would come by on a day when we weren't celebrating? My heart thudded as I slowly turned a knob and pulled the door open. Standing there was Mrs. Parker, our elderly neighbor from across the street. She held a covered dish in her hands, steam curling from beneath the foil. Behind her stood two other neighbors, carrying bags and trays, their faces glowing with kind smiles. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart," Mrs. Parker said warmly. "We know your family said things were tight this year, so we thought maybe you'd like some company." I blinked in disbelief. For a second, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened as I looked at the food: roast chicken, stuffing, pies, and even cranberry sauce. It wasn't just a dish. It was an entire Thanksgiving. "But how did you know?" I finally whispered. Mrs. Parker chuckled softly. "Oh, dear. News travels fast in a neighborhood like this. We all figured no one should be alone on a day meant for togetherness." They carried the food inside, filling the empty table with colors and scents I thought I wouldn't experience this year. The once bare kitchen now buzzed with life as neighbors unpacked dishes and arranged them, laughing and chatting as though they'd always been part of our family. I stood there in awe, tears blurring my vision. Just hours ago, I had been convinced Thanksgiving was gone forever. And now, here it was, reborn in the kindness of people I never expected. Soon, the door opened again, but this time it was my parents, returning from work. Their eyes widened at the sight of the feast spread out before them. For a moment, guilt flashed across their faces. We didn't want you to feel disappointed," my father admitted softly. "We thought skipping it would hurt less than giving you too little." I shook my head, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "You don't get it. Thanksgiving doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be together." My mother's eyes filled with tears as she hugged me tightly. The neighbors smiled, pulling up chairs. And just like that, the empty, cold day transformed into something beautiful. As I looked around the crowded table, I realized the truth. The holiday hadn't been canceled at all. It had only been waiting for a new form to appear, one born not of tradition or money, but of compassion and love. That day, I learned something unforgettable. Sometimes, when the things you cherish seem lost, life surprises you with something even better. And that Thanksgiving, it wasn't the one I expected. It was the one I needed. When the laughter died down and the neighbors had gone home, the house grew quiet again. But this time, the silence was different. It was heavy, filled with unspoken words. My parents at the table, their faces tired, almost ashamed. I knew we couldn't just brush this away. I broke the silence first. "Why didn't you tell me the truth? Why say Thanksgiving was canceled?" My father rubbed his temples and let out a long sigh. "Because we didn't want you to see us fail. We couldn't afford a big meal, not like before. We thought if we canceled it altogether, it would hurt less than giving you something small." "Hurt less?" The words cut deeper than they intended. "But you don't understand," I said, my voice trembling. "I didn't care about the size of the turkey or the number of dishes. I just wanted us to be together. I wanted the laughter, the stories, the family. That's what Thanksgiving is to me." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We thought you'd feel embarrassed if we couldn't give you the holiday you deserved." I shook my head firmly. The only thing that embarrassed me was sitting in an empty house, scrolling through photos of everyone else celebrating. Do you know how that felt? Like we gave up on what mattered most. The room fell silent again. My parents exchanged a look, one of guilt, but also understanding. My father finally reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "You're right," he admitted softly. "We let our pride get in the way. We forgot what this day is really about. Tears spilled down my cheeks, but for the first time that day, they weren't only tears of sadness. They were tears of release. We had faced the truth, painful as it was, and in doing so, found something more valuable than a table full of food. That night, our family sat together with the leftovers from a neighbor's feast. The food was simple, but the moment was rich with honesty. And for the first time in years, I felt like we were truly closer, because we had finally spoken the words that needed to be said. The next morning, the house felt different, lighter, warmer, even though nothing on the surface had changed. The table was still bare, the fridge still modest, but something important had shifted between us. For the first time in a long while, we were honest with one another. My mother was the first to speak. "We may not have much," she said, "but we do have something to share." She pulled out a bag of flour, some eggs, and a few apples. "Why don't we make a pie? A small one, just for us." So we did. My father rolled the dough, my siblings peeled the apples, and I sprinkled cinnamon with a heavy hand, laughing when too much spilled over. The kitchen filled with the kind of sound I thought was lost, laughter, chatter, and the comforting aroma of food being made with love. While the pie baked, we set the table together. No fancy plates, no polished silver, just what we had. My father lit a single candle from the back of a drawer, placing it in the center as though it were the finest decoration in the world. When we sat down, there was no turkey, no grand spread, but there was us. We held hands. And for the first time that holiday, I felt full before even taking a bite. We shared stories, joked about old memories, and even dreamed out loud about better days to come. My parents apologized again for trying to hide the truth, and I forgave them, realizing they had only acted out of fear and love. That small apple pie became our feast. Each bite was sweeter than any grand meal we'd ever had because it was flavored with honesty, resilience, and togetherness. It wasn't the Thanksgiving we were used to, but in many ways it was better. It was real. It was ours. And as I looked around at my family's smiling faces, I realized something I would carry with me forever. Thanksgiving isn't about what's on the table. It's about who's around it. As I lay in bed that night, the scent of apple pie still lingering in the air, I thought back on everything that had happened. The day I had feared would be empty turned out to be one of the most meaningful Thanksgivings of my life. We didn't have the traditional feast. We didn't have a picture-perfect table. But we had something stronger: honesty, forgiveness, and the reminder that even in hard times, love could fill the gaps that money could not. I realized then that the neighbor's kindness, my family's humility, and our little pie around a candlelit table had given me a new perspective. Thanksgiving wasn't canceled at all. It had simply been reshaped into something purer, something more real. They said we couldn't afford Thanksgiving. I whispered to myself, smiling in the dark. But what I got instead was priceless. From that day forward, I knew I would never measure holidays by the size of the meal or the sparkle of the decorations. Instead, I would measure them by the laughter, the closeness, and the memories we built together. And this Thanksgiving, the one I thought I had lost, became the one I would remember forever.